In this passage, we are still in the speech of Saches, the Italian, who you remember has run up or rushed up on his horse to Turnus. He's been wounded right in the face by an arrow, and he's just told Turnus that King Latinus is wondering basically which side to pick. Is he going to be on Turnus's side, or is he going to be on Aeneas's side? And that explains the first word of this passage, praeterea. Praeterea means moreover. So not only is Latinus no longer a certain ally of Turnus, but also here's another problem. Moreover, and then the subject is regina, so moreover the queen. And this is a reference to Queen Amata, who is the wife of Latinus. So we start, moreover the queen, tui fidissima. Now, tui fidissima is a difficult phrase, because tui is actually genitive. One possibility, which is the way I originally translated it, is to say most faithful to you. And that is possible, but the commentary suggests that the best translation might be who placed all her trust in you, because that would give a better explanation of her suicide. So let's say, moreover the queen, who placed all her trust in you. And then the main verb is occidit here, which means has died, or has perished. So the queen has died, sua dextra, by her own right hand. And the shock of the suicide is emphasized by the word ipsa with sua. So we might translate ipsa using the English word very, like by her very own right hand. And, que, she has fled, fugit. And this is an example of fugio taking a direct object. She has fled the light, lucem, i.e. she has fled from the light, exterrita, that means terrified or in terror. We then hear about another group, or in this case a pair of people, soli pro portis, alone before the gates. Soli means alone, pro means before or in front of, and portis are the gates. So, alone before the gates, Messapus and Acer Atinas. Now these two words, Messapus and Atinas, are names of Italians defending the city. And then Acer is an adjective agreeing with Atinas, and it means something like fierce or eager. So the point is that these two people are on their own defending the city. Or presumably they're not literally on their own, but perhaps they're the ones on whom the city is depending. And therefore the question is, where's Turnus? Why isn't Turnus here? So, alone before the gates, Messapus and fierce or eager Atinas are sustentant acies. Now it's quite difficult to translate this. The way I originally translated it was something like are sustaining the battle lines, meaning that they're sustaining the Italian battle lines. That is one possible translation. Another possible translation is that they are holding off the battle lines. In other words, they are holding off the enemy battle lines, the Trojan battle lines. The commentary suggests that might be a slightly better translation, because it might be a better explanation of why them being alone is so important. So perhaps we would be best to translate this as hold off the battle lines. And then a new sentence, circum hos, around them, or around these men, circum plus accusative. And hos refers to Messapus and Atenas. So around these men, utrimque, this word utrimque means on both sides. So around these men, on both sides, stand, that's the main verb, stant. And what are standing around these men? Well, the subject is densai phalanges. Now, densai from densus means dense or close packed, and phalanges are battalions. So, around them stand close packed battalions, and this is que. And then we have a new subject, which is ferrea seges, an iron cornfield. Ferreus means made of iron, and a seges is a cornfield. And then our new main verb is horret, which means bristles, with strictis mucronibus. Now, mucronibus are swords, or daggers, and strictis is a PPP, meaning having been drawn. So literally, and an iron cornfield bristles with drawn swords. Now, of course, this is not a literal cornfield, this is a metaphorical cornfield. There are so many Trojans here that it looks as though it's a cornfield, right? Their swords are so closely packed that it's a bit like all the ears of corn which stand really close together in a cornfield. Okay. And we then get the contrast between this scene and what Turnus is doing, which is introduced by the word to. And so Sarkes is saying, you versas, you turn, or you keep turning your currum, your chariot, on the deserto gramine, in deserto gramine, on the deserted grass. So gramine is grass in the ablative case, and deserto is agreeing with it. So in other words, there are all these brave Italians like Messapus and Atenas, and then Sarkes, who was then wounded in the face. They are in the thick of the action, defending the city. And in the midst of this crisis, Turnus is somewhere else. He should be there with the Italians defending the city, but he is not. That's the point. We then have obstipuit, okay, which refers to Turnus. Okay, so, and in fact, there's Turnus at the beginning of line 666. He's the subject. So Turnus, obstipuit, he was stupefied, he was shocked, he was stunned. And then he's described as confusus, having been confused or confounded. And he's confounded, literally, by the various image of things, by the varia imagine rerum. So you've got two ablatives, varia and imagine, and then genitive plural rerum, meaning of things. So what does that mean? He is confounded by the various image of things. It means that he's confounded by the changing appearance of things. In other words, he's stunned that the situation has changed so much in such a short time. Right? He can't keep up with the changing events. That's the point. So he was stunned, and that's et. And the next main verb is stetit. Right? He stood obtutu tacito. Now this is an ablative phrase. Tacito means silent, It's an adjective, and it agrees with obtutu. This is the ablative of obtutus, which means gazing or looking. So he stood in silent gazing. So he's not saying anything, he's just sort of staring silently, trying to process all this information. And then, the next subject, or the subject in the next phrase, is ingens pudor. Ingens means huge, it's an adjective, and pudor means shame. So a huge shame, and then the main verb is aistuat, which means seethes or rages or something like that. In uno corde, in his one heart. Okay, there's two things to say here. One is the pudor, the shame. Why is Turnus feeling shame? It's because his companions are busy fighting bravely to defend the city, and he's not. So that's the cause of the shame. The other question is, why does Virgil say in his one heart? That seems pretty obvious. Everyone has one heart. But the point is, the shame is so strong. Right? There's so much shame that it feels as if somehow it should be shared between lots of people's hearts. It's as if Turnus's heart cannot contain all of the shame that he's feeling. That's the point. So, a huge shame seethes or rages in his one heart, and, that's que, and we now hear about two other things, or in fact three other things, which are seething in his heart. One is an insania, right? That means a madness. And then we have the two ablatives, mixto luctu. So that means literally a madness with mixed grief. In English, it would be more natural to say a madness mixed with grief. But Latin puts mixto with luctu. So a madness mixed with grief. What is this grief that Turnus is feeling? It's probably grief for the death of Queen Amata. Right? She committed suicide, and Turnus only found out about that a few lines ago. So the insania, that's the second thing that is seething, aistuat, in Turnus's heart. The third thing, after et, is a love, an amor, which is agitatus furies, agitated by frenzy, stirred up by fury, stirred up by passion, something like that. And this is the love, this amor is the love that he feels for Lavinia, the princess, who he knows he might now lose to Aeneas. Because remember, this is one of the big questions in the last part of the Aeneid. Who is Lavinia going to be married to? Will she be married to Turnus, the Italian, or to Aeneas, the Trojan? And in the end, she becomes the wife of Aeneas. And then we have a third thing, which is seething in Turnus's heart, and that is a conscia virtus. This literally means a conscious courage. A conscious courage. And again, the question is, what does that mean? I originally translated this as an awakened courage, a courage that's now been awakened inside him. The commentary suggests two other translations. One is where you imagine the word sibi after conscia. So in other words, a courage aware of its own worth. A courage that knows its value, right? Turnus realizes that he's actually worth something and he should go and fight. Another possible meaning is describing the courage as guiltily aware. Guiltily aware. In other words, a courage that is aware in a guilty way that it is not activating Turnus, that it's not stirring Turnus on to do better things. A courage that realizes it's been sleeping on the job, as it were. It hasn't been doing its function. So there's various different ways of translating this. The commentary suggests that the best translation might be a courage aware of its own worth. So I would use that as the translation. So I'll just actually go through that last phrase one more time. Well, that from aistuat to virtus. So a huge shame seethes or rages in his one heart, and a madness, an insanity, with mixed grief or mixed with grief, and a love agitated or stirred up by frenzy or fury, and a virtue, a courage, aware of its own worth, conscious of its own worth. And then we'll just do 3 more lines here before the paragraph break. We have at the beginning of line 669 the phrase ut primum. Now, ut primum literally means when first, but the most common way of translating it is as soon as. So as soon as, and then the subject is umbrae. So as soon as the shadows, and then we have discussai, and we have to imagine est, discussai est. So as soon as the shadows were dispersed, or sorry, we have to imagine erant. So as soon as the shadows, discussai erant, were dispersed, or actually, I suppose, erant or sunt, something like that. We could have discussai sunt, but the point is that word is missing, right? We have to imagine it there. So as soon as the shadows were dispersed, and, that's et, as soon as the light, the lux, returned, redita, and again we have to supply est, as soon as the light returned, redita est, or was returned, we should perhaps say, was given back to his mind. So menti is the dative singular of mens mentis, meaning a mind. So as soon as the light was returned to his mind, he, and now turnus is still the subject, and the main verb is torsit. He turned, or, I mean, torqueo is the verb here. It literally means to twist. We could say he turned, and the object here is orbis, which is really orbes. In prose, this would be orbes, and orbes are circles. So literally, he turned the circles of his eyes, genitive, oculorum. So you could just say he turned his eyes, but the Latin literally says he turned the circles of his eyes. And in fact, the orbis are described as ardentis. So he turned the ardentis orbis, the blazing circles of his eyes, ad moenia, towards the walls. And then we have the conjunction and, which is here, aeque. So a means out of, but que is and. So and, turbidus is an adjective meaning sort of wild or something like that. So wildly, he respects it. He he looked back to the great city, ad urbem magnam, to the great city, from his chariot, a rotis. Now, rotis are wheels, but so literally the Latin says from his wheels, but the idea is from his chariot. So, and wildly, he looks back towards the great city from his chariot.